In 1912, a rare book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich walked into a chest of old manuscripts at a Jesuit college in Italy and pulled out something that would consume the next century of human intellectual effort. The book was small, 240 pages of vellum, animal skin prepared for writing, covered from margin to margin in a language nobody had ever seen. Not Latin, not Arabic, not Hebrew, not any known script from any known civilization. Every page was filled with a confident, flowing hand that moved left to right across the page as if the writer knew exactly what they were saying. Hundreds of detailed illustrations accompanied the text. Plants that do not exist in any botanical record. Astronomical diagrams showing arrangements of stars that do not match any known sky. Naked figures bathing in green liquid flowing through elaborate pipe systems. A circular diagram that some researchers believe is a map of something that has never been identified. The book is now in the Beinecke Rare Book Library at Yale University. It has been studied by the greatest codebreakers in history. Alan Turing's colleagues at Bletchley Park worked on it. The U.S. National Security Agency worked on it. Hundreds of professional linguists, cryptographers, historians, and computer scientists have worked on it. Artificial intelligence systems trained on every known language have been applied to it. Nobody has decoded it. Not one word. Not one sentence. Not one confirmed meaning in 600 years. And the reason why has led researchers to a conclusion that is more disturbing than any of the theories about what it says. The physical history of the Voynich manuscript before 1912 is itself a mystery that took decades to partially reconstruct. When Wilfrid Voynich found the book at the Villa Mondragone near Rome, it came with a single letter tucked inside its cover. The letter was dated 1666 and was written by a Bohemian doctor named Georgius Bartius to Athanasius Kircher, the most famous scholar in Europe at the time and a man renowned for his ability to decode ancient scripts. Bartius wrote that he had a mysterious book filled with an unknown language and illustrations of unknown plants and asked Kircher if he could identify the script. Kircher apparently did not respond, or if he did, his response has been lost. But the letter proved that the manuscript existed in Prague in the mid-17th century and that even then, 3.5 centuries ago, nobody could read it. Further research traced the manuscript back further. It had apparently been owned by Emperor Rudolf II of the Holy Roman Empire, who ruled from Prague in the late 16th century and was one of the greatest collectors of curious and occult objects in European history. Rudolf reportedly paid 600 gold ducats for the manuscript, an enormous sum equivalent to several years of a skilled craftsman's wages, suggesting that whoever sold it to him believed it was extraordinarily valuable. Carbon dating conducted in 2009 by the University of Arizona placed the vellum, the material on which the text was written, to between 1404 and 1438. This is the date of the material, not necessarily of the writing, but it establishes that the manuscript is genuinely medieval and not a modern forgery. The ink and the pigments used in the illustrations have also been analyzed and are consistent with materials available in 15th century Europe. So the physical object is real. It is old. It was written by a real person or persons using real materials available in the early 15th century. And from the moment it first appears in documented history in the court of Rudolf II, nobody has been able to read a single word of it. Part 2. The greatest codebreakers in history failed 5:10:00 to understand why the Voynich manuscript is genuinely extraordinary and not simply a puzzle that nobody has gotten around to solving. You need to understand who has tried to solve it and what tools they brought to the task. During the First World War, professional military cryptographers examined the manuscript. These were people whose entire career was built around breaking codes under conditions where failure meant soldiers died. They made no progress. During the Second World War, the manuscript was examined by William Friedman, who is considered by many historians to be the greatest cryptographer of the 20th century. Friedman and his team had broken Japanese military codes and contributed to cracking the German Enigma cipher. He spent years working on the Voynich manuscript across multiple periods of his career. He died without having decoded it, leaving behind only the cryptic conclusion that the text might represent an artificial philosophical language constructed on entirely different principles from natural human language. The NSA, the United States National Security Agency, which employs more mathematicians than any other organization on Earth and operates the most sophisticated code-breaking infrastructure in human history, conducted a classified study of the manuscript. The results of that study were declassified in 2002. The conclusion was that the manuscript remained unbroken and that the agency had no explanation for the statistical properties of the text. Those statistical properties are at the heart of why the manuscript is so baffling. When researchers apply the mathematical tools of linguistic analysis to the Voynich text, it behaves in ways that are deeply contradictory. On one hand, the text follows Zipf's law. This is a mathematical relationship that holds for virtually every natural human language ever studied. It describes the frequency distribution of words in a text and produces a specific curve when graphed. Random text does not follow Zipf's law. Meaningless gibberish does not follow Zipf's law. The Voynich text follows it almost perfectly, which strongly suggests that the text carries real linguistic information organized according to real language principles. On the other hand, the text has statistical properties that no known natural language shares. The word structure is unusual. Certain letter combinations appear with frequencies that differ from any known language. Some researchers have noted that the text has lower entropy than most natural languages, meaning less information density per character, which is inconsistent with a complex cipher applied to a natural language text. The manuscript seems to behave like language when you look at it one way and like something else entirely when you look at it another way. This contradiction has driven every serious researcher who has spent significant time with it to the edge of frustration and, in some cases, beyond. Over the past century, hundreds of theories have been proposed about what the Voynich manuscript is and what it says. A small number of these theories have attracted serious academic attention and have not been entirely dismissed. The most persistent serious theory is that the manuscript is written in a natural language but using an unknown or invented alphabet that substitutes different symbols for the letters of a known language. This is called a simple substitution cipher, and it is normally one of the easiest codes to break because letter frequency analysis reveals the underlying language quickly. The problem with applying this theory to the Voynich text is that simple substitution does not explain the unusual statistical properties of the text. If you substitute unknown symbols for Latin letters, the resulting text should have the statistical profile of Latin. The Voynich text does not have the statistical profile of any known language. In 2014, a researcher named Stephen Bax published a paper claiming to have identified 14 words in the manuscript by matching the illustrations to known plant and star names in medieval languages. His method involved finding illustrations that resembled known plants, looking up what those plants were called in medieval Arabic, Hebrew, and other languages, and then matching the letter shapes in the Voynich text to those known words. The academic response was cautious. Some of his proposed identifications were considered plausible. None have been confirmed by subsequent independent analysis. In 2019, a researcher named Gerard Cheshire published a paper claiming the manuscript was written in a lost dialect of medieval Romance language called Proto-Romance. His paper attracted enormous media attention. It was subsequently criticized severely by professional linguists and historians who found his methodology flawed and his translations unconvincing. The University of Bristol, where Cheshire worked, eventually distanced itself from the paper's conclusions. In 2022, a team of computational researchers applied artificial intelligence language models to the manuscript and reported finding statistical similarities to certain Hebrew texts when specific transformation rules were applied. The results generated significant interest but have not been independently replicated to the satisfaction of the academic community. Every theory that has claimed to crack the Voynich manuscript has faced the same problem. It can explain some features of the text but not others. No proposed solution has produced translations that are consistent, coherent, and verifiable across the entire manuscript. The book remains unread. Part 4. The most disturbing theory. 1500 hours. 19:00. There is a theory about the Voynich manuscript that most researchers find more unsettling than the possibility that it contains hidden knowledge. It is the theory that it contains no knowledge at all. In 2004, a researcher named Gordon Rugg proposed what has become known as the Voynich hoax theory. Rugg argued that the manuscript could have been produced using a simple device called a card and grill, a card with holes cut into it that is placed over a table of syllables to generate pseudo-random combinations that look like words in an unknown language. He demonstrated that a person using a card and grill could produce text with statistical properties similar to the Voynich text in a reasonable amount of time. The hoax theory proposes that the manuscript was created specifically to be sold to Rudolf II, who was known for paying enormous sums for supposed mystical and occult texts. A sophisticated forger who understood Rudolph's interests could have produced a convincing fake philosophical or alchemical manuscript, complete with elaborate illustrations of impossible plants and astronomical diagrams, and sold it for 600 gold ducats to a buyer who would never be able to expose the fraud because the text was designed to be unreadable. The hoax theory has problems. It does not fully explain all the statistical properties of the text. Producing 240 pages of consistent pseudolanguage using a Cardan grill would have required enormous effort and would have needed to maintain statistical consistency across the entire manuscript in ways that are difficult to achieve through simple mechanical means. And the carbon dating establishes that the vellum is genuine 15th century material, which means if it is a hoax, it is a hoax that was prepared over a century before Rudolf II acquired it. But the hoax theory will not go away because it offers the only explanation that accounts for the central mystery. If the manuscript is a hoax, then the reason nobody has decoded it is simple. There is nothing to decode. The text is designed to look like language without being language. It passes linguistic tests because it was constructed by someone who understood enough about how language works to mimic its surface properties without creating actual meaning. This is the disturbing conclusion that some researchers have reached after a century of failed attempts. The most sophisticated codebreakers in history have not failed because the code is too complex. They have failed because there is no code. After everything, after a century of the best human and machine intelligence being applied to 240 pages of vellum, what do we actually know about the Voynich manuscript? We know it is genuinely old. The carbon dating is reliable. The materials are consistent with early 15th century Europe. Whatever the manuscript is, it was made by a real person between 1404 and 1438 using real materials available at that time. We know it is internally consistent. The text is not random. It follows statistical patterns that are consistent throughout the manuscript. Different sections of the book, what researchers call the herbal section, the astronomical section, the biological section, and the recipes section, have slightly different statistical profiles from each other, suggesting either that they discuss different subjects or that they were written by different people. This internal consistency is very difficult to explain if the text is purely random noise. We know the illustrations are deliberate and detailed. The drawings of plants, while not matching any known species exactly, show consistent artistic style and appear to represent something specific that the illustrator had in mind. The astronomical diagrams contain real astronomical concepts, including what appears to be a representation of the Pleiades star cluster. Someone with real knowledge drew these illustrations for a real purpose. We know that no proposed solution has survived serious scrutiny. Every claim decoding has been found to have fatal flaws when examined by independent researchers. The manuscript remains, in the formal academic sense of the word, undecoded. And we know that it is sitting in Yale University right now, fully digitized, with every page available in high resolution online for free. Millions of people have looked at it. Hundreds of researchers continue to work on it. The solution, if there is one, may come from a direction that nobody has thought to look yet. Or it may be that the manuscript's greatest secret is that it has no secret at all, and that the most sophisticated forgery in history has fooled the world's greatest minds for 6 centuries and counting. The Voynich manuscript is in room 38B of the Beinecke Rare Book Library at Yale. You can see it in person if you make an appointment. You can see every page of it online right now for free. 600 years of human eyes have looked at those pages. The greatest mathematical minds of the 20th century looked at them. Machines trained on every language ever written looked at them. Nobody knows what it says. Nobody knows who wrote it. Nobody knows why it was written. Nobody knows if it says anything at all. What we know is that someone in the early 15th century sat down with 240 pages of prepared animal skin, a pen, and pigments, and filled every page with something. Something they wanted to look like language. Something they organized into sections with consistent internal structure. Something they illustrated with plants that do not grow in any garden on Earth and stars arranged in patterns that do not match any sky. They finished the book. They put it away somewhere. And 6 centuries later, it is still waiting. In a library in New Haven, Connecticut, under controlled temperature and humidity, preserved better than almost anything else that was made in 1420. Still unread. Still unexplained. Still the most mysterious object in any library in the world. Subscribe, because if anyone ever does decode it, you will want to hear what it says. And if nobody ever does, that answer is just as important.